Every morning, before you've eaten a single bite of food, your blood sugar has already started moving. It moves while you're still asleep. It moves in the first 10 minutes you're awake, before coffee, before breakfast, before you've made a single decision about what goes on your plate today. And what you drink in that narrow window, the first liquid that hits your stomach after 8 hours of fasting, can set the tone for how steady or how chaotic your blood sugar runs for the rest of the day. Most people have no idea that's true. I want to change that this morning. I'm Dr. Park. I've spent more than 15 years practicing internal medicine and studying nutritional biochemistry, which is really just a formal way of saying I study what food, and the way we prepare and time it, actually does to the human body once it's inside us. Blood sugar has been a particular focus of mine, because after 50, the stakes around it quietly change. And today, I want to walk you through a countdown. 6 things you can drink first thing in the morning, ranked by how much they actually do for your blood sugar, building to the one at the very top, the one I genuinely believe deserves to be called the morning drink that steadies you for the whole day. Stay with me to that last one, because it's not what most people expect, and it comes with a catch almost no wellness article ever mentions. The amount matters, the timing matters, and doing it wrong can cancel out the entire benefit. Let me also tell you up front what I'm not doing here. I'm not selling you a powder, a shake, or a course. There's no supplement at the end of this video. This is the research, translated into plain English, and what it means for your morning routine. That's the whole transaction. So let's talk, for just a minute or two, about what's actually happening inside you before you've had breakfast. Because once you understand this, every item on this list will make sense, instead of feeling like a random collection of health tips. While you sleep, your liver does something remarkable. It has been quietly releasing small, steady amounts of stored sugar into your bloodstream all night, to keep your brain fed while you're not eating. This is completely normal. It's called the dawn phenomenon, and it happens to everyone, diabetic or not. But in a lot of people over 50, especially if insulin sensitivity has started to decline with age, that overnight release runs a little hot. Your fasting blood sugar in the morning can already be higher than you'd expect before you've touched food. Then, the moment you eat or drink something with sugar in it, a second process kicks in. How fast that sugar actually empties from your stomach into your small intestine, where it gets absorbed into your blood. The faster it empties, the sharper and faster your blood sugar spikes. And a third process decides what happens to that sugar once it's in your bloodstream, how well your muscle and fat cells respond to insulin, the hormone that tells them to open up and pull sugar out of the blood and put it to use. That responsiveness is called insulin sensitivity, and it's the single biggest lever in whether a blood sugar spike is a brief blip or an all-day roller coaster. I want you to hold on to 3 things as we go through this list. The liver's overnight sugar release, how fast your stomach empties into your gut, and how well your cells are listening to insulin that morning. Almost every single item on this countdown works on one of those 3 levers. Some work on more than one. Keep them in mind, because I'll point back to them as we go. And here's the one idea I want you to carry through this whole video, the lens that ties it all together. Most advice about morning blood sugar is about what to cut. Cut the orange juice, cut the pastry, cut the sugar in your coffee. All true, all useful, but almost nobody talks about what you can add before you eat that actually blunts the spike that's coming. That's the reframe. This isn't a list of things to give up. It's a list of things to put in the glass first, that change how your body handles everything that follows. Number 6 on the list, and I want to start here because it's the one people dismiss as too simple to matter. Plain water, first thing, before anything else touches your mouth. Here's why something as unglamorous as water earns a spot on a list about blood sugar. After 8 hours without a drink, you wake up mildly dehydrated, and dehydration concentrates everything in your blood, including glucose. Several studies looking at hydration and metabolic markers have found that people who are even mildly dehydrated tend to run higher fasting blood sugar and higher cortisol, the stress hormone that itself pushes the liver to release more stored sugar. It's not a dramatic effect on its own, but it's the foundation everything else sits on top of. If you're dehydrated, your liver's morning sugar release runs hotter than it needs to, and you're starting the day already behind. So what should you do? 16 ounces of plain water, no ice, room temperature if your stomach is sensitive, within the first few minutes of waking. Before coffee, before anything else. It costs you nothing, and it takes 30 seconds. Number 5, unsweetened green tea, and specifically, the plain kind. No sweetener, no milk. Brewed for a few minutes, so it actually has strength to it. Green tea contains a compound called EGCG, a type of catechin, which is just a plant antioxidant compound, and this particular one has been studied specifically for its effect on how your cells respond to insulin. Several clinical trials pooling data across different populations have found that regular green tea consumption is associated with modestly improved insulin sensitivity, meaning your muscle cells listen a little better when insulin knocks on the door and asks them to absorb sugar out of the blood. I want to be precise here. This is an association found across multiple human trials, not a guaranteed individual effect, and the size of the benefit is modest, not dramatic. It is not a substitute for anything your doctor has prescribed, but as a swap for something sweetened. It's one of the few morning drinks that actively works in your favor, rather than just being neutral. So what should you do? A cup of green tea, brewed at least 3 minutes, in the 15 to 20 minutes before breakfast. If caffeine bothers your sleep or your blood pressure, a decaffeinated green tea keeps most of the catechin content, The caffeine and the catechins are separate compounds, so decaffeinating doesn't erase the benefit. Number 4, and I want you to lean in for this one, because it's the item almost every health-conscious person over 50 assumes is completely safe for blood sugar, and that assumption is exactly the problem. Black coffee, taken on a completely empty stomach. Here's why this one earns its place on a list that's supposed to be reassuring. Black coffee has no sugar in it, so intuitively it feels blood sugar neutral, maybe even blood sugar friendly. But caffeine itself is not a passive bystander. Research published looking at caffeine and glucose tolerance has found that caffeine can acutely reduce insulin sensitivity for a period after consumption, meaning if you drink black coffee on an empty stomach and then eat carbohydrates shortly after, your blood sugar response to that meal can run higher than if you'd eaten the same meal without the coffee, or with the coffee after food instead of before it. I want to be careful with the language here, because this is genuinely mixed evidence. Not every study finds this effect, and the size of it varies a lot between people, likely tied to genetics around how quickly someone metabolizes caffeine. But it's consistent enough, across enough research, that I think it deserves your attention, especially because it runs completely against what people assume. So, what should you do? I'm not telling you to give up your coffee. I'd never do that to you, and there's no reason to. The fix is sequencing. If you're someone managing blood sugar closely, try having something small in your stomach first, even a few bites of protein, before your coffee, rather than coffee on a totally empty stomach first thing. It's a 5-minute change in order, not a change in what you drink. We're at the halfway point, and I want to pause here for just a second, because numbers 2 and 1 are the ones that actually move the needle the most, and one of them is the answer to the question in the title of this video. If you've made it this far, stay with me, and if this kind of plain language sourced breakdown is useful to you, this is exactly what this channel does every week, so consider subscribing before we keep going. Number 3, roasted barley tea. In Korea we call it boricha, and I want to be honest with you about exactly what this one does and doesn't do, because I don't want to oversell something just because it comes from my own tradition. Boricha is not a metabolic powerhouse. It doesn't contain meaningful fiber, because it's an infusion. The barley is roasted and steeped, not eaten, so most of what transfers into the water is antioxidant compounds and flavor, not the grain's fiber content. Where it earns its place on this list is as a replacement. In Korea, boricha has traditionally been the everyday morning and mealtime drink in place of sugary juices or soft drinks, and the value here is almost entirely in what it's not. It has 0 sugar, 0 calories, and no caffeine, which matters if caffeine affects your sleep or your blood pressure. If your current morning drink is orange juice or a sweetened coffee drink, swapping it for barley tea removes a real glucose spike from your morning without adding one. That's the honest case for it. Not a special metabolic effect, but a genuinely neutral, pleasant-tasting replacement for something that was actively working against you. So what should you do? If you already drink something sweet most mornings, this is your easiest swap. Steep roasted barley in hot water for 5 to 10 minutes. Drink it warm or over ice. It won't move your blood sugar numbers on its own, but it will stop moving them in the wrong direction. Number 2, cinnamon. Added to warm water or stirred into your coffee or tea, unsweetened. Cinnamon contains polyphenol compounds that some laboratory research suggests may act somewhat like insulin, helping cells take up glucose even without insulin present. That's a real and interesting mechanism. But I need to be straight with you about the human evidence, because this is a place where a lot of content out there rounds up more than it should. Some clinical trials in people with type 2 diabetes have found a modest reduction in fasting blood sugar with regular cinnamon intake. Other trials, just as well designed, have found no significant effect at all. This is genuinely mixed, unresolved science, not a settled fact. I'm including it at number 2, not because the evidence is airtight, but because the downside risk is essentially 0, the cost is nothing, and for some people it appears to help. That's a reasonable bet to make with your morning drink. As long as you don't mistake might help a little for definitely will. So what should you do? A half teaspoon of ground Ceylon cinnamon, not the cheaper cassia variety, which contains higher levels of a compound called coumarin that isn't great for your liver in large amounts over time. Stirred into your morning coffee, tea, or warm water. And now, number 1. The morning drink I'd point to, out of everything we've covered, as having the clearest, most consistently reproduced human evidence behind it for blood sugar. Water with diluted apple cider vinegar, taken in the 15 minutes before you eat breakfast. Here's the mechanism, and this ties directly back to the 3 things I asked you to hold on to at the start. Apple cider vinegar contains acetic acid, and acetic acid does 2 measurable things. First, it slows gastric emptying. It literally slows down how fast food leaves your stomach and enters your small intestine, which flattens out how quickly sugar hits your bloodstream after a meal. Second, several controlled studies, including a well-known trial published in the journal Diabetes Care by researchers led by Carol Johnston, found that vinegar, taken before a carbohydrate-containing meal, significantly reduced the post-meal blood sugar spike compared to the same meal without vinegar, and the effect was strong enough to be clinically meaningful, not just statistically present. This has since been replicated in other trials looking at insulin sensitivity as well, with some research suggesting the effect is even more pronounced in people whose insulin sensitivity has already started to decline, which describes a lot of us after 50. That's 2 of your 3 levers working at once, which is exactly why I put this at the top. Now, here's the catch I promised you at the start, and I want you to actually hear it, because doing this wrong genuinely can cancel out the benefit or cause a different problem. This only works diluted, and it only works in a modest amount. We're talking 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar in a full glass of water, not a shot of it straight. Undiluted vinegar can erode tooth enamel over time and irritate the esophagus and stomach lining, and drinking large amounts doesn't multiply the benefit. The effect plateaus, and the risk to your throat and stomach just keeps climbing. More is not more here. This is food chemistry, not a dare. That's a phrase I want you to remember, because it's really the whole idea behind this video. This isn't fear, and it isn't magic. It's food chemistry. Every item on this list works when it works, because of a specific, explainable physical process happening inside your body, not because something is clean or natural or traditional. And that matters, because I want to be honest with you about something. Being Korean, coming from a food culture built around fermentation and balance, and the old idea of yaksik dongwon, food and medicine sharing one root, doesn't make anything on this list automatically safer. Barley tea isn't better for your blood sugar because it's traditional. Vinegar isn't better because Korean cooking has used fermented vinegars for centuries. It earns its place because of what the acetic acid physically does in your gut, measured in actual human trials. I want you thinking like that about everything you put in your body, not just what's on this list. So how do you actually put this together into a real morning without turning it into a project? Here's the version I'd suggest to a patient. When you wake up, water first, the full glass, before anything else. While that settles, if you're a coffee or tea drinker, have a small bite of something with protein in it. A hard-boiled egg, a spoon of plain yogurt, a handful of nuts, before your caffeine, not after. Somewhere in that same 15-minute window before your actual breakfast, the vinegar water, diluted, sipped slowly, not gulped. If cinnamon appeals to you, it goes right into that same glass or into your coffee. That's the whole routine. It takes less time to do than it took me to explain it, and every part of it is working on one of those 3 levers: hydration and cortisol, gastric emptying speed, or insulin sensitivity, before a single bite of your actual breakfast has entered your body. Let me tell you about a patient. I'll call Mrs. Han, because her story is the reason I wanted to make this particular video. She was 68, managing pre-diabetes, and she'd already done everything the standard advice tells you to do. Cut the morning orange juice, cut the pastry, switch to oatmeal. Her fasting numbers were still stubbornly a little high, and she told me, almost apologetically, that she felt like she'd already given up everything she could give up, and it still wasn't enough. That's such a common feeling, and it's an unfair one, because most people are never told about the other side of the equation, what you can add, not just what you remove. We talked through this exact routine. Water first. Diluted vinegar before breakfast. Coffee after a few bites of egg instead of on an empty stomach. Nothing dramatic, nothing expensive. At her next check-in, 3 months later, her fasting glucose had come down meaningfully. And more than the number, what she said to me stuck with me. She said it felt like something she was adding to her mornings. Not one more thing being taken away. That shift from restriction to addition is often the difference between advice someone follows for 3 weeks and advice someone actually keeps for years. Now, I want to give you the honest caveats, because a responsible video about blood sugar has to include them, and because naming the limits of this advice is what makes the rest of it trustworthy. If you are on insulin or a medication, like a sulfonylurea, that lowers blood sugar directly, apple cider vinegar's blood sugar lowering effect can stack with your medication and increase your risk of hypoglycemia, genuinely low blood sugar, which is dangerous. This is a conversation to have with your doctor before adding vinegar to your routine, not something to just try and see. If you have gastroparesis, a condition where the stomach already empties too slowly, something that's more common in long-standing diabetes, vinegar's gastric slowing effect can worsen your symptoms rather than help you. So that's another reason this is individual, not universal. And if you're on blood thinners, this particular routine doesn't interact with those the way, say, vitamin K-rich foods do. But it's still worth mentioning to whoever manages your anticoagulation. Simply as good practice anytime you change your daily intake. And if you have kidney disease, particularly advanced stages, please talk to your nephrologist before adding acidic drinks or concentrated supplements of any kind to your routine, since your body's ability to handle certain compounds changes with kidney function. I also want to be clear about something this video is not saying. Nothing here replaces a prescribed diabetes medication, a continuous glucose monitor your doctor has you using, or your scheduled A1C testing. This routine is support and prevention, and in some cases meaningful risk reduction. It is not treatment, and it is not a cure. And anyone who tells you a morning drink cures diabetes is not being straight with you. This is general, educational information based on published research, not personalized medical advice, and your own situation, your medications, your kidney function, your other conditions, matters more than anything I can tell you in a video. Please talk to your physician or a registered dietitian before making a real change to your routine, especially if you're managing an existing condition. Let's bring it all the way back together, quickly, because I want you to leave with something usable, not just something you enjoyed watching. Plain water first thing, for hydration and to keep your overnight cortisol and glucose release in check. Unsweetened green tea before breakfast, for a modest, genuine improvement in insulin sensitivity. Black coffee, but sequenced after a small bite of protein rather than on a completely empty stomach, so it doesn't work against you. Roasted barley tea is your swap for anything sugary you're currently drinking. Cinnamon, unsweetened, added to what you're already drinking, for a possible modest benefit, at essentially no cost. And at the top, diluted apple cider vinegar, 1 to 2 tablespoons in a full glass of water, in the 15 minutes before breakfast. The single item on this list with the clearest, most repeated evidence behind it. If you're only going to start with 2 things tonight, or tomorrow morning, make it the water first thing, and the diluted vinegar before breakfast. Those 2 alone touch 2 of the 3 levers we talked about. They cost you nothing, and they take less than 5 minutes combined. I'd genuinely like to know which of these surprised you the most. I read every comment, and I mean that. Was it the coffee timing, or did you already know about the vinegar? Tell me down below, and tell me which of these you're actually going to try tomorrow morning. If this kind of plain, sourced breakdown of what's really happening inside your body is useful to you, this channel exists to keep doing exactly this. Every week, real information about eating well after 60, without the scare tactics, and without the sales pitch. Subscribe, if you want more of it. And next week, I want to sit down with you about something almost nobody questions. The 5 everyday drinks quietly raising blood pressure in people who think they're doing everything right. A couple of them might already be sitting in your kitchen. I'll see you then. This isn't fear. It's food chemistry. And now you know a little more of it than you did 10 minutes ago.